Hello everybody, my name is Joanna. I am your host for The Window Seat. You are about to watch episode 4 with Reverend Derrick Campbell, and I hope it blesses you guys just as much as it blessed me. He is the owner of Trophies Pizza, as well as a ordained minister, preacher. I hope I'm getting that right, Reverend Campbell, so forgive me if I'm not. I am so excited to bring this to you guys. I do want to let you guys know towards the last 10 to 15 minutes, you'll see the camera try to focus in and out. We were going through the solar eclipse, and so, sometimes things happen. One thing I won't do is I will not silence anybody or withhold a story that could be a blessing because the camera is focusing. So we're going to keep on pushing through. We're going to release this to you because I know it's going to bless you. Happy Thanksgiving, because you guys are seeing this on Thanksgiving Day. We just want to say thank you for watching. Thank you for viewing, for liking, subscribing. We do see that and we appreciate it. We love you guys from the bottom of our hearts. And so we are grateful just to see a Thanksgiving, and we can't wait to see what next year's Thanksgiving is going to look like. And so I'm just grateful for each and every one of you. I want to say thank you to my sister Tiana Gray. She helped us get this equipment so that we can continue to release the content. She believed in it that much. So thank you for that. Without further ado, thank you guys. Enjoy. Hi. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
This is episode 4 of The Window Seat with our special guest, Reverend Derrick Campbell. We are going to go into this, but first, I have known you since I was like a toddler.
About 9. You're maybe 9.
Very long time.
8 or 9 years old.
Best friends with my dad.
Yes.
Growing up,
Yes.
y'all went to the same school.
Yeah.
Which was pretty cool because your son and I got very close.
Yes.
We're the same age. We're a couple of weeks apart as far as how old we are, so that was pretty cool. So you've seen me grow up.
Yes. Absolutely.
You've seen me grow through life, and so this is going to be really cool. I've looked at you as like a second father, so this is very, very much a blessing for me. So first, let's go with, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, like who you are and how you got to be who you are today?
Well, let's go with the latter first. I got to be who I am today because of the grace of God. Okay, the grace of God, that's all. But it didn't start out that way for me. No. I had a very good upbringing, very good rearing. 2-parent home, me and my sisters, older and younger. We were raised in this very house. I was 2 years old when it was built.
Wow.
Yeah, I was 2 years old, and really a year and a half. It was built in the summer of '67, so I was a year and a half old. But by the time we actually moved in, I was pretty close to 2. And I've got pictures. My mother took pictures of when we were little and stuff when we first moved into this house. So it's been in the family. My sisters and I, we really want to try to keep it in the family as long as possible, as much as possible. But in this house, my parents reared us to be in church, to grow to love church, be used to church in your life.
Right.
The only thing about that is, it's just like anything, too much of anything for anybody can leave a bad taste sometimes.
Right.
So when you get older, you tend to, I don't want to say fall away, but you find other interests with friends that don't go to church like you, with you, in school, influences, what have you. But I love the fact that they raised us church. Even though when we were young, we didn't fully appreciate it, but it left a foundation. It built. It was there was groundwork established because of that in our lives, so that once we got to a certain age of adulthood, all of us, both me and my sisters, it was like a natural thing to flow back to what we were raised in.
Okay.
Even though we had gotten far out,
Yeah.
away from what we were raised in. But it was amazing to see how those roots and that foundation led us back. And both me and my sisters, we were very active in church and in the ministry and in church work. And how I got to my business, it was a vision from the Lord. I say it was a vision because I was going through probably the lowest point of my life, and I had just lost my job with a company that I'd been with for 21 years. I lost my second job that I had. My dad, he was contracted, but he subcontracted some of his contracts out to me. So I was working for GTE and doing contract cleaning services, offices for him. So I was subcontracting for him. And at 1 year, I lost both jobs. Those contracts he had, they decided to go with someone else that he was subcontracting out to me. He still had the ones that he did. And I lost my job with GTE. And that brought stress and turmoil in my family life. I was on my second marriage with my second set of kids, 3 boys, Joshua, Samuel, and Isaiah. Andrew and Darius are my first oldest 2 from my first marriage. And that left a really a big, I want to say, not scar, but hole when I lost my work and wasn't able to really find anything decent for about pretty close to 22 months. That left a really big hole. And my wife, my then wife, she had a problem dealing with it. So our marriage began to go in separate directions. And we found it harder to get along. So while I was going through a divorce from my second wife, I lost my jobs and I had no work. And while I was delivering pizzas for a classmate, and I just gotten a job with Cytel, which I did not like at all, and I didn't stay very long. I was delivering pizzas for him, and that opened the door for me to own a pizza business and to be my own boss. So I was ordained and licensed in 1989 in the ministry. I remember Pastor Lemons. He gave me a deacon's book. I was trying to get myself back in line with church at that time. I'd gotten away after I graduated from high school, my college years and young adult years, through my mid to late, let's say my early to late 20s, I'd just gotten completely away from church. And me and my dad had a long talk one time, and it kind of encouraged me to kind of get back into the scene that I was raised in. So I started trying to get back into that scene. And I remember Pastor Lemons was the pastor at the time, and he was like, he said, "Brother Campbell, come here. I want to give you this." And he gave me a book that it was a training manual for deacons. And he said, I'd like to consider you as for deacon position in the church. He said, take this book and look at it, read it, and let me know what you think, and we'll get you started. And he put that book in my hand. It didn't feel right, and I was like, yeah, there's something in me, but it ain't this. And I didn't know what it was. And then one day, I was sitting in on a sermon, and it was talking about the call of God on a man's life. And there were 2 other young men my age. We were in a program at St. Paul, a young men's program, and they had received their calling, and I really felt that that's what I was being led to do. So in '89, that's when I announced my calling into the ministry, instead of becoming a deacon, and that's how I got into the ministry.
So let me ask you, because I guess I always heard about growing up how someone is kind of brought in, the terminology is slipping my mind, but ordained. There you go. In my mind, I always thought being an ordained minister means somebody else had to say, I'm ordaining you. Whereas you said, I was called to do this. So how is that like, I don't know, I guess in my mind I always thought that it wasn't as receptive if you said, I was called to do this, opposed to someone else speaking on your behalf saying you're ordained.
Well, a calling is and an ordination are two different things. Okay, a calling is something that you first should receive. In other words, no one can tell you. If someone may say, man, the call of God is on your life to become a preacher, that's all well and good, but if God doesn't tell you that yourself, then what good is that? I'm not going to do that because he said it. I might believe it and accept it, but I'm still not going to do that until I hear from God myself, because that's not something a person really wants to do, to be honest with you, up front. Some people do. Some people live for that. Some people were born for that.
Yeah.
But I wasn't. And the majority of the people that I knew that came into the ministry and received their calling, that wasn't what they were looking for.
Right.
And they didn't choose it up initially. But when God convinces your heart that he's calling you into the ministry, that's when you answer your calling. You let your pastor know and all of those who are in authority over you at your local assembly. And then they begin to set up the process to license and ordain you under that church.
Okay.
And the license and the ordination, one's for the church and one's for the city to acknowledge.
Okay. And I think we need to mention, because we kind of skipped over this too, which, forgive me, because I'm still like learning myself when it comes to things like this, and I've watched a lot of podcasts where they do interviews, and so I'm trying to do better. But I think we need to really expand on this and say that you're the owner of Trophies Pizza.
Yes.
And so for people who don't know you, when they hear you speak about your business and pizza, he's talking about Trophies Pizza.
Yes.
And so I felt like we need to mention that part. And I probably should have said it when I introduced you.
That's fine. No, that's fine. It's Trophies Pizza. Y'all come on out. We don't skip on the topping.
No, and he personally makes all the pizzas. So
well, me and Derrick.
Yes, I mean most of the time when you're in the shop, like I always see you hand making all of your pizzas, which is very rare. Like, you know, chains, they have different people who make pizzas, but very rarely do you see an owner step in and put their own hands to work in pretty much everything. So I think that that's pretty amazing to say, and it sets you apart. So
it may not be the best way to run an operation, but because I'm really a hands-on guy, and at the same time, it's more cost-effective, labor cost. But I'm a hands-on type of guy. Now Darius, he's my manager. He's meticulous.
Yeah. Okay,
he's detail-oriented, so we kind of balance each other out.
Yeah.
But yes.
And it's kind of like an unspoken thing between you guys. Being in the shop a few times and watching you guys work, it's kind of like he's there, and whenever he sees that you need help, he just steps up and moves. He fills in exactly where where he sees that he needs you need help. So I think that's a pretty amazing thing. I do want to ask, because I don't know how comfortable you feel with this, but one of my questions is marital advice. And so you did mention that you had been through two divorces. And so being as someone who's known you since I was a kid, like I've seen you when you were not married and when you were married and then not married again. And we've had conversations in the aftermath a lot about marriage and how do you deal with different things, like, when you're not aligned sexually with your spouse, how do you work through those issues? And so do you want to expand on that a little bit, and maybe
which one in particular?
Either or. I mean, just how your marriages turned out the way they did, and then what advice do you have for people who are married now or who are looking to be married, that you would say that you absolutely could not live without giving this type of advice, or could not go on and say, if I knew you, I have to tell you this, because I don't know. I'm one of those people where I'm like, if I know somebody's about to do something and I've already been through that, I have to say something so that they don't stumble the same way that I did, right? And so
exactly, exactly.
And so I guess expand on that for us, if you will.
Well, my opinion. This is all opinionated. I'm not going to lay any theology down on marital advice, but just my own experience and my opinion. And when two people are seeking to be married or want or desire to be married, I will tell them. And having married, put you joining people in marriage, because I'm ordained to do that too. And watching those marriages also dissolve, it's frustrating to see, and it makes you not even want to do that perform that function of your ministry anymore, because you don't know no minister likes to see the two people that they join together divorce,
right,
or anybody, but especially someone that they put together. But my advice, and my opinionated advice to any couple, you both better love Jesus more than one another and or yourself first. First. You better love Christ more than that person and yourself. And your significant other better love Christ more than you and themselves. Better, because I guarantee you Satan is going to bring things that's going to test your love for one another. And our love is not strong enough. Our love is not strong enough to endure marriage. It's not. It takes the love of Christ in both those individuals. The fact that I love Jesus first and foremost more than you, and I love you, but all my heart is His, and I welcome you into that. But He's who I'm sold out for, because that attitude is when your love for her fails, and vice versa. His love keeps that marriage together. It will, because you're faithful in your love to Him. He's going to be faithful in keeping your marriage together.
Right.
That's the way I believe. So if I'm giving advice, and I don't perform marriages anymore. And if it's a family member, real close family, and they're begging me, I'm going to talk with them for at least a day and find out how much they love Jesus first. Yeah. And if they do, I'll tell them, I'm sorry, I can't do this. I won't do it.
Yeah.
Wow. That's my measuring rod.
Okay. So let me ask you this: as someone who has been raised in the church, who was brought up in the church, was there a time and a moment that you had an encounter with God that just made you say, okay, I know God is real for me, and I want to be saved now?
It was when I received my calling. This is so interesting because like I said, I was raised in church.
Yeah. I
mean, all I knew growing up was church. Sunday mornings was a religious ritual for us. Wednesdays, prayer meetings, they had Bible study, youth training union, young adult training unions, vacation Bible schools, youth congresses, and church associations, and all these things we went to. My parents had us at, and religiously, and had us in these things. But those things, when they formed the foundation, and hang on, my mouth escaped. I'm sorry, what was the question?
So what was your encounter with God?
And so when I got away, okay, because I went on a rant, I'm sorry. When I got away,
that's what this is about, so you're good.
When I got away from what I was raised in and what I knew, and I really got out there, and I want to say maybe 3 or 4 years of being out there in my first marriage, and my first wife, she went to church with me, but she was not into church like I was. She wasn't raised like I was in the church. So coming back to it wasn't as easy for her as it was for me. And that's where our problems began. And then when I came back through, because of the conviction, after talking with my dad and trying to get my conscience being convicted, I think I really know then that was the Lord really beginning to reel me back in. And I started just going more and more on Sundays instead of going out to the lake on Sundays with my wife or with my son, with Dandry at the time. He was the only one we had, but he was little. When I ended up coming back into the church, she wasn't as gung ho about it. But I was feeling this pulling. Yeah. And when a couple of my brothers received their calling, I was like, it just felt natural. We were in the same young men's group, and we were all studying and growing in the church and in spirituality at the same time, right? And I was watching them, and it was like it was normal, it was natural, to me to see them accept their calling. And I was like, man, I know that's what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah. And when I told Pastor Lemons, hey, I really feel the Lord's calling me into the ministry, he got so excited. That was when I truly felt like I was saved. Okay. All this time in the church, and at this time I want to say this was 1980, the end of 88, going into 89. So I was 23 years old. So I'm 23 years in the church. Wow. And I didn't feel, and I was baptized when I was 8. But I'm sorry, I didn't know what I was doing when I was 8. I just wanted to get in the water. It seemed fun. Right. But when I announced my calling, that was real to me. I felt that was the Lord, and I felt I truly believed and had faith.
Okay, so let me ask you this, because I do remember, being young and my dad coming, me and my dad coming over to visit you guys, and you had a house that was right next to a little church that you were the pastor of.
Yeah, that was the parsonage. Yeah.
So tell me how you transitioned from answering your calling in St. Paul to now I'm leading and heading my own.
Pastor.
Yes.
Well, here's the thing. Like I said, the Lord was reeling me back into the church. My wife then, Dandry and Darius' mother, had just given birth to Darius. She had just given birth. This was in 1989 when I told her. The Lord moved on me at the end of 88, but I didn't tell her until I was 100% sure. So it was after she had given birth, and it was going into the spring of 89. And I remember telling her, I said, and I'm not going to mention any names of my exes because I don't want to disrespect them because they may not appreciate it, even though my first wife has passed on, but still. My first wife, I remember telling her, I was getting back in the church, and she had a little trouble with that, but she was slowly starting to understand and come to grips with it. And then after she gave birth, she was ready to get back to things that we used to do together. And she was ready to, okay, if you want to go to church, I'll go to church with you, but hey, can we still hang out with our friends and party and go out and do our things that we used to do? And that had changed in me. Right. So when I finally told her, I remember telling her, I just told Pastor Lemons I received my call from the Lord. And she said, call from the Lord for what? And I said, into the ministry. And I remember she looked at me so disappointed and heartbroken. She wasn't ready for that life. And I didn't know how to help her get ready. And she looked at me and she said, well, what am I supposed to do? To me, to her, and I didn't understand that then. I wish I had did. But I was so young and I was so new. Looking back, hindsight, 2020, the Lord shows you, retrospect. To her, I just left her. Oh, wow. That's the way she felt. So, needless to say, as I got moved more into the ministry, she tried to come. And all due respect to her, she tried to come for about a year. She was doing. When I told her, when I was even licensed or ordained, she had a problem with it, but she was there, and she tried to adjust. And it was like, I don't know if she was meant for the ministry, right, but I was trying to make her fit the ministry. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that was the Lord trying to separate us. I don't know how that figures in with marriage and divorce, because that's what ultimately caused our marriage to end. Mm-hmm. Because when she tried, and she was coming along in the ministry, and we would still do some things. I would hang out with our friends a little bit, I wouldn't as much. I wouldn't mind if she did, and I would try to every now and then, just because she was accommodating, trying to come with me into the ministry. But when I told her that I received a call and an offer to pastor, mm-hmm, that was just another gut shot that she couldn't take. She definitely wasn't ready for that. Mm-hmm. And I knew this, but I had to make a choice. I'm going to answer the call, because I wasn't out applying for church leadership, pastor. I wasn't doing that. I wasn't looking to pastor. Right. I was satisfied at St. Paul being an associate minister. I was trying to get my house together, get my family, but trying to bring my wife along as much as she wanted to come along. And I knew that if I started pastoring, she would go. Mm-hmm. I knew this. But the call to do that was so heavy, my conscience, one night I just couldn't even sleep until I said, okay, yes, Lord. Okay. So that's when I began to pastor Greater New Hope. Mm. And the Sister Thomas, she was the elder lady there. Her and her husband pretty much built that church. They acquired the property next to it, and she asked me, I remember her asking me, she said, Pastor, if we bought this property next to us as a parsonage for the church, would you live in it? And I was living in my home on Juanita Street with my wife, even though our marriage was dissolving. It just came at the right time. At first, I was like, no, I'm not moving into that house. It's small. I'm claustrophobic. This house is way too small. Yeah. But the Lord set that up the way He wanted it, because it was at the right time. We went into divorce. I had to move out, because I let her have the house instead. So I chose to move out. And that house, when she did that, it was available for me to move into. Mm. I didn't have to try to move into an apartment or even try to be a burden to my parents. Right. Because I was still in my 20s pretty much. But she bought the house and I moved into the parsonage. And that made the dissolution of our marriage final when I did that. Then it was done. Because she had moved out into an apartment, mm-hmm, and I know she was kind of struggling, trying to take care of her bills and things at the house, because the kids stayed with me at a house that we lived in on Juanita. Right. So she struggled a little bit, and I knew it. But I told her, I said, hey, look, the church bought a parsonage, and I can move there. There is no rent for me. So you can move back here and I can help you here. Right. Since the kids will be staying here too. And then we're back and forth between the parsonage and Juanita. So that's how I ended up pastoring and moving into the parsonage. It was rent-free. Mm. I was going through a divorce. That was one expense I didn't have to worry about. That was the Lord's will.
Okay, so I want to ask this just because I think a lot of times we don't get this viewpoint into situations where it's God's will for things to happen, and we don't ever hear about like how the individual deals with that. Because I do know that there's a scripture in Proverbs that says, and I'm paraphrasing, the blessings of God don't come with confusion, right?
Right.
And so, was there ever a point where it was kind of hard for you to deal with this being God's will, like your marriage no longer working according to the calling God had put on your life? Was there a point where it was difficult for you to handle that now, you know, there's a divorce in play, like, and so, like, how did you maneuver through that situation? How did you handle that?
Well, in both situations, yes, I questioned God about marriage, because the divorce was not amicable. It wasn't something that I wanted. Both my wives wanted it. I only agreed to it because Paul says when a person wants to leave a relationship, we must let them leave. If they want to stay and they're unbelieving, let them stay. Because you sanctify that person. But if that person wants to leave, you have to let them leave, because God is not going to force a person to stay with someone else. So we should not. God is not forcing us to stay in a relationship with Him. So understanding this, when I asked them, is this what you really want? Because I don't want this. I want us to try to work it out. I do not believe that divorce is a part of God's will. I don't believe. The Bible says and teaches that the divorce was allowed by God, given by Moses, not given by God. It was God allowed Moses to give that law of divorce, that for no reason can a man put away his wife except for sexual immorality or fornication, adultery. And Jesus followed up and said, but this is not the intention of God. Okay, it's permitted, but that's not the intention of God. That's not the will. That's permitted, but that's not the will. The will is what God joins together, let no man put asunder. But because the men in the Jewish day, and today is even worse, were putting their wives away for just about anything, any little reason, God permitted Moses to give that law. Well, I was not in agreement with the reason that they gave. There was no sexual immorality or adultery. There was no physical abuse. There was no, well, in every relationship there's going to be mental abuse, because in every relationship a husband and wife argues. They disagree.
Right.
So, and that's the emotional abuse on a very low level, minor level, but still, the emotions go through struggle and suffering. When two people who love each other disagree, get into an argument, have a problem.
Yeah.
But so that kind of abuse, no, there was no mental anguish abuse or physical abuse in the relationship to where that their lives were threatened or my life was threatened. They just didn't like the direction that I was going in. Well, my first one, that I was going in. My second marriage, she just felt that the love was gone, that I did not have the love for her anymore, and I couldn't make her see or show her or help her feel that it hasn't gone anywhere. It's still there. She just chose to believe that it wasn't. So her emotions were not into the relationship anymore. So I gave her what she asked for, just like I gave my first wife what she asked for. So no, I don't believe or agree with divorce, but if a person wants out, you have to let them out.
That's good, because I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
That's the first time I've ever heard that. Okay, so now we've seen your advice and what you would say to someone who's married or situations like that. What would you say what advice would you have for like single folks like me who want to get married one day? What would your advice be for us in this single period, and that would help for us once we get married?
Find a person that loves Jesus more than you.
Okay.
If you can find that person, I don't care what they look like. And they're into you, and they're vibing you, get to know that person.
Right.
Start pursuing that person. That person loves Jesus more than I do. That's the person you want.
Okay.
Because I mean, if they love you as much, if they love Christ as much as you do, that's cool too. I mean, but the ideal choice is, oh man, yeah, he or she loves Christ more than I do. Ooh, I want. That's what I want. And hope that you're what they want, and they see Christ in you as much.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say.
Okay. So what is something someone told you or taught you growing up that made like a lasting impact on your life?
Not growing up, but in my adult, the most important thing that was ever laid on me that made an impact on my life made me see God a little bit differently at that point, because I was at a little point. I was going through my first divorce, and this is the greatest impact that somebody else's words ever had on me. And I've listened to many intellectuals and theologians, and there are a lot of words that had impact on me. But this helped me like no other one time. I remember when going through my first divorce, I was talking to my brother. His name was Kelvin Bryant. He was very instrumental in keeping me focused on Christ while I was going through the lowest period of my life. He helped me maintain my focus, because that kept my sanity. It kept my mind firmly founded and stable, so that I wouldn't lose it while I was going through it. Because I really had a tough time divorce in my first marriage. But I remember one time we were talking, and I was having a really bad day because my ex at that time, she wanted something from me that I didn't think that she had the right to ask me, and I didn't want to, and I was like, no, that's not right. That's not right. I'm not doing that. And as I was talking to him, he was just listening, and he listened to me splur out, man, I'm not letting her take it back. I'm not letting her do this to me again. I'm not going to allow this. I mean, it's not right. He said, and he said, Brother Campbell, he said, you're right. So that's your right. And God is not going to ask you to go against your right. But what the Lord will do is, if there is a more righteous way, He will lead you and guide you to take the more righteous way. So he said it's almost like having a chance to choose right over right. So when I was like, what? And that made my heart melt. And I was like, because what I felt was my right to do and have became so small and minimal and minute compared to what God's righteousness wanted to be on display in that situation to her. It's not right what she's asking me to do. It's not right what you are fixing to do, because it's just not right in favor of you. It's not to your advantage. Yeah. But there is a greater right, and it's called righteousness. And in righteousness, the only thing that's right is that God is glorified. Right. Now, if you have by your right, you having your right appeased, is God glorified? If yes, if you did it the righteous way, would God be glorified? Greater. Yes. Yes. Because that causes me to sacrifice. That causes me to put down what I want and what I think is fair and right. And to choose something greater than my nature can do of its own. So that left an impact, and I try to use that whenever I talk with people, and especially when people talk about being unfairly treated, being unrighteously treated.
Wow, that's good.
That left the biggest impact in my life.
Okay. We've gone through a lot of these already. Okay, this is a good one. This is one that I added that I thought was really important to show because we talk about one of the questions is what would you say to someone who doesn't believe in God or is teetering on believing whether God is real or not? And so when I asked that question, I was like, one thing that we're not showing is people who have a relationship with God, what their favorite thing is about it, or what they learned or really love about their relationship with God. So I guess answer for us, what would you tell someone who maybe doesn't quite believe in God or is kind of like, I don't know if he is real or not, and then go into what your favorite thing is about being in a relationship with God?
Well, you want me to be honest?
Yes.
This is my approach to something like that. This is my approach because I've had to deal with so many young people and teens who are at this, and I've learned different ways what failed and what's successful.
Yeah.
If I see a person like that, I get to know them personally. I want to know them personally, not religiously, not spiritually, not with the intent to even minister to them and to talk about Christ to them.
Right.
I know what they believe and what they stand for, and especially if they're teetering or struggling, I get to know them personally, and I want them to know me personally as a person that they can trust. I really want them to, man, he's a good person. He's helpful. I can depend on him. Look, man, it's 2:00 in the morning and he's listening to me. I get to know him. And I don't give him any godly advice anymore. I used to up front, but not anymore. I get to know him. I build a foundation of trust. It's a work. It's a ministry. And it ain't going to happen overnight for somebody that's struggling with the faith or who don't know God and who you know God wants to be drawn to him. That's not going to happen overnight. It very rarely it does. Sometimes it depends on the nature or condition of the person's life, how bad how dark of a hole they're in, how dark the situation is in their life. Sometimes it can be immediate, but most times a person that doesn't have faith, they're struggling with it. They want to get into debates for you to convince them, but they really don't want to be convinced.
Right.
So instead of getting into mindless debates like that, I just said, okay, let me just know them as a person and be their friend as a human being. Gain their trust so that when things happen in their lives, and it will, because God's going to make it happen. He's going to allow the devil to do some things in their lives that's going to cause them disappointment, heartache, strife, stress, pain. They're going to want to come to me because they trust my help. I've always been there to help them. So that's how I approach situations like that and build that relationship so that at the right time, when the Lord has their heart ready, then I can plant that seed of the gospel, of the ministry of Christ. But knowing that what I'm doing now is preparing the soil, the way that I treat them, the way that I love them. It's preparing the soil. Okay, it's not the seed, but it's preparing the heart by the trust in a human being, something they tangibly can feel and see. God, they can't feel, they can't see. That's why they struggle with believing. He's not tangible to them. And I'm sorry, that Bible, it's already been proven that Bible ain't true. The devil has made good work of that in the last 50 years to disprove the Bible. So this generation of millennials have an excuse. That is not accurate. And you cannot use that to me. So, okay, that's okay. I won't come at you that way now.
Yeah.
You want to go out to eat?
I think what I just heard, thank you, Holy Spirit, was it reminds me of the story in the Bible of the man who planted seed on good soil, because there was portions where it fell off into rocks and the seed died off. So the fact that you said that is like, it painted a picture for me in my head to see where you do have to do that. And I think we have to mention that that's just authentically you without you even trying to be that way. That's just who you are.
Yes.
So I think it has to come with a form of authenticity and being genuinely like you have that love and care for people where you're like, I just have to meet you where you are.
Yes.
And so
Exactly.
I think
exactly it.
that's
exactly
important
it.
because in doing that, we are being like Christ because Christ, when you see the stories about him in the Bible, he was meeting people where they were.
Yes.
And
yes.
so that I think I had to just say that because I was like, oh my gosh, like
it all came clear.
Yes,
huh?
it did.
That's how the Lord works.
Yes. Okay, so tell me about your favorite thing about being in a relationship with God.
My favorite thing?
Yes.
The fact that he is long suffering. Dang, Joanna, I love the fact that he puts up with me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And it's teaching me a good lesson on how to put up with people that really annoy me. It's like, wait a minute, God, the Lord don't treat me this way, because I know I deserve to be treated much worse. So I'm not going to treat this person just because they annoy me, or frustrate me, or get under my skin. I'm not going to treat them. I'm going to forgive them and be patient with them. I'm not perfect at that yet, but I see the lesson in that, and that's the road I want to go down.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Because I think one thing when growing up in the church and times are different now, right? Like we're starting to see that God is breaking the strongholds of religion.
Yes.
But you're raised to think that like God is he's just really harsh and he's going to punish, and so and he's just.
Yeah.
At the same time, like God is love, and we tend to forget that, and so I'm like he disciplines us, yes. At the same time, he has so much mercy and so much grace, and so that's really good, and that actually answered one of the questions that I had on here. So, is there anything that you would have done differently that you could have done differently?
Knowing what I know today, is that question?
Yeah.
That kind of question?
Yes.
I would have done everything differently. Knowing what I know today. Everything. I would have watched less TV. I wouldn't have gotten into pornography. Because pornography led to premarital sex. Premarital sex led to children born before marriage.
Oh man.
I would have done a lot of things differently. I'd have paid more attention in school. I'd have loved church more. I look at Billy Graham's show, Billy Graham Evangelistic Ministry messages.
Yeah.
I grew up, Joanna, with the guy. Okay, he started way back in the late 40s. And I remember as a child growing up in the late 60s and the 70s, his ministry got so big, he's called a nation preacher. His ministry got so big that they would televise it. They would break in on the normal, traditional viewing program for about 30 minutes to 45 minutes. And they would let Billy Graham preach on your TV. On CBS, NBC, or ABC, whatever network they had him on at that time.
Wow.
Throughout the year. It could be once a month, once a quarter, however the networks would allow him to preach. Back then, that was because we only had 3 networks. And the programming, the scheduled programming was already compact. So growing up on TV, I love TV, my programs. When they came on to preach, though, he's intervening with me, bringing my program.
Yeah.
I'm watching the Brady Bunch or Bewitched or Dragnet. My TV shows that I'm the kid watching my parents watch. And I remember the TV was right there. Billy Graham, preaching, and put my show back on. As a little kid, that's the way I'm thinking. Man, I'm out here preaching every Sunday. I go to church Wednesday. I'm here preaching about Wednesday. I don't want it now. I want to watch my show.
Yeah.
But Billy Graham preaching it. So I did not appreciate it then as a youth.
Yeah.
Because it interrupted my life, my lifestyle. Now I look at it and I love it. I appreciate it. I go back and I look at all those crusade ministry messages and see what he had to say back then. I can see why he was nation's preacher, because he pushed the envelope further than what traditional ministers were doing at that time. He didn't care, and he let people. He told them to tell back in 69 and 70 to tell an audience the majority of your audience being white, Caucasian. He had some minorities in there because minorities loved it too. They would go to crusades, but the majority Caucasian, that Jesus was not a white man, and we need to get that out of our heads.
Yeah.
He would boldly tell you that. Do you know that it was a black man that helped him carry his cross? He preached that from over the pulpit. And I know all these Southern Baptist theologians sitting up there that support his ministry are cringing because that's not the system that was taught in America, and that's not the way it's supposed to be taught. But Billy would be up there on national television. Jesus was not a black man. I mean, not a white man. His skin color was darker. He was not a Caucasian, Western European man. He was raised in the Middle East. He was Hebrew, and his skin was dark. It may not have been as dark as an African skin, but it was much darker than ours. The people of that day, it was probably dark brown to dark brown. That I understand, Billy. Understand that now, folks.
Yeah.
And once you understand that, then you can appreciate how it doesn't matter what color your skin is. Jesus is for the world. He loves the world. We preached that message, and I'm like, wow, the time. That was revolutionary for a preacher to do.
Yeah, sure was.
So I appreciate it. I appreciate it more now than I ever did then. Yeah.
And even to this day, people are still talking about Billy Graham. Like the sermon that you're talking about, you can go on social media now and see it being shared, and they do like those side-by-side reaction videos, and so I think it's amazing that kind of message transcends time.
Yes.
So I think for me doing this, the one thing that God is showing me, and just the way social media works now, right, is that right now you may only have 2 or 3 people who are watching this, but the thing about the internet is it stays there forever.
Right.
And so all it takes is one kick of the algorithm to push your video to the top, and then you're reaching thousands or millions of people with this message. And it could be after you're long gone from the earth, and so I think that that's really amazing. And so I'm learning Billy Graham, Catherine
Coleman.
Catherine Coleman.
Yes.
I'm learning about those types of individuals. Benny Hinn, that were like the beginning staples of what ministry into the world and the masses was like. And so it's pretty cool.
Yes.
That's crazy that you were raised in a time. I didn't know that they did that.
Yes.
So it's like a service announcement.
We're going to interrupt a normally scheduled programming for the how they say it, for the following service announcement.
Oh,
that's the way they announced it.
Wow.
Billy Graham Crusade. It's like, oh man, I want to watch Pee Wee. I was Sanford and Son. And he'd come on and preach, but you know what's funny? Because my parents they would be watching it. Sit down and we'd watch it. Because we were used to church, and then we did not. This is the thing. We did not turn to another network. If he was on CBS, okay, we could go to NBC or ABC and watch whatever they had. Right. We didn't turn. We left it on there.
Right.
So we respected it, even though it was interrupting our entertainment. But
well, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, this is a good lead-up question. Okay, if you could go back in time and talk to a younger you, what would you say? And we're not pinpointing a certain time frame or age. It's just whatever age or time frame in your mind that pops up when I ask that question. That version of yourself, what would you say?
I'd go back and I'd see little Derrick, and I would say, look, boy, try harder in school, in church, read books. I would go back to first grade Derrick that's learning how to read. Get into reading. Read more. Try harder. Get into church more. And love it more. I would tell them, man, love this. love this because it's going to be important for you when you get older. I would try harder. Try harder. Try harder in school. Don't be lazy. Don't accept a C when you know you can make a B. Try harder.
You know, one thing that I learned, so I have a cousin and his wife she's an elementary school teacher. And growing up, you know, Sandra Gray is my grandmother. She's a retired English teacher. So every birthday, Christmas, we got books, you know, and so it was kind of like another book, you know.
Another English teacher.
And she understood the importance of reading then. It wasn't until I talked to my cousin's wife that she was like, do you know that in the state of Texas, the way that they determine how many prisons that they're going to need is based off the third grade reading test scores.
Wow.
So they've determined that if you cannot read at a certain level by third grade, that you're going to end up in prison.
Wow. That's scary.
Yeah. And so I was like, that's what they tell their teachers. It's one thing that they've learned. And so that's why teachers push the importance of reading so much at a young age, because, I mean, it's either you read or you go to prison. You know, and it's crazy. So, yeah, I think it's very important that people know that reading is
very
crucial.
It's very crucial to determine how well you do in school. I'm sorry. After all these years and looking at the smart people, the really smart people, and the average people, and the less smart people, and seeing the difference between them, the one significant difference is all these people over here read all the time. They were always reading from a very young age, and they liked reading.
Yeah.
The very few of them were just straight mathematicians, where mathematics was it for them, and they wouldn't read as much. They didn't care to read because they didn't need to.
Right.
Very few of them like that, but the majority of them, the smart and the really smart people out there, they like to read. They love to read, and they always read.
Yeah.
You know, so Derrick would have read. Did it first grade. Didn't read. Fox and Hen, read.
Read something.
Read something. I don't care if it's the comics. Read.
Yeah.
You know, read.
That's so important. Wow. Okay. So now we're getting into the last little bit of our interview. This is another one that I added to, which is really good. But give me what your favorite scripture or passage or story in the Bible is and why.
Man, Job.
Okay.
Job. Okay. Man, a righteous man who became a little too self-righteous for God's liking, and God had to deal with it.
See, we've never heard that perspective before, and I think that was one of my favorite parts about reading the book of Job that people don't talk enough about, is that after he went through all of this, he got frustrated, and he went off on God for a minute, and then you see verses and verses and chapters of God just going off on him, wait a minute now, where were you when I created the earth? Yes. And he just went in on Job and humbled him real quick.
You're a little too self-righteous, Job.
Yeah.
I'm going to deal with you. Even though I bragged to Satan and let him know, he's the most upright human being on the planet. You can't break him. Go ahead, try. Yeah. But the whole time, the Lord was using that so that he could deal with what he needed to deal with. Job. Right. And the reason why I like it is because you see from the beginning to the end, the Lord transitioning Job into a deeper, greater relationship with himself.
Okay.
Because at the very end, Job testifies and says, I've known you by what I've heard of you. Mm-hmm. I was raised on you. I heard my daddy and my mama talked about you. And I heard the elderly men talk about you and describe you. So I learned righteousness by what I heard about you. Mm-hmm. He says, but after God finished with him, he says, but now my eye sees you. Mm-hmm. See, he went from knowing God to seeing God.
Yeah.
And it was a spiritual thing. His
Right.
spiritual eye was open. It wasn't before. You know, and may God open all of our spiritual eyes so that we see him in fear, with respectful fear, reverence, and love.
And that's what the pruning is
yes.
you know, he takes off. And I think too, this is what caught my eye just now when you said that was he was in a really great spot, and Job had a fear of God, or an awe of God, a reverence of God.
Yes, he did.
And so that what caused him to say that God say about him that this is my most upright person.
Yes.
But it took him saying, okay, well, even though you have such a reverence and fear for me, now it's time to go deeper.
Yes.
And so the other thing, and I didn't mention this when I heard you because I don't like to interrupt y'all when y'all are talking, but what I heard whenever you said that you answered the call was that God shook up your life.
Yes.
And so, and that caused you to go into one of the lowest points of your life.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of times whenever, you know, we preach the gospel or we hear it, it's a come to Christ, come to know Christ and be saved. And like there's supposed to be this great change, this great transition, and life is just amazing. What I think that is not shared a lot is that once you do answer and say, I believe that you're my savior, I'm repenting from my sins, is that now things are going to get rough.
Yes.
So strap in, buckle in.
Get ready.
He's the potter.
Yes.
You know, and so what happens when you have to break it all down, wet it, and you know, make it into a ball to where it's like nothing.
Yes.
And then you go through the molding, the heat to harden it to you know, and so I thought I had to point that out because I was like, man, it's, you know, life. Yeah. And so regardless if you're saved or not, you're going to go through things. It's just, there's no way that you can go through life and not experience hardships or heartache or loss, or, you know, that's just part of it.
Yes.
And so the thing about being saved is you have Christ.
That's right.
So you're going to go through these things, but you have Christ.
You have Christ.
Yeah.
To help guide you through them.
Yeah.
To navigate these life issues.
Yeah. And I think that's part of being a believer is
keep your sanity.
Yeah, because like I have, and I'm not going to say how I know her because I don't want to put her out like that, but I was going through a really rough time after leaving my youngest son's dad. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going through it by myself though, so it's okay. And she's like, wow, that must be really, really comforting knowing that you're going through things not alone.
Wow, yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, you know, you could go through that too, you know.
If you want.
If you want to believe, you know that you're not alone. And so I think that's something that's not really talked about a lot or shared a lot. And so I thought we should definitely expand on it a little bit. Okay, and so these are the last two things that we like to end the interviews with. And so it's going to be, what would you want people to remember about you? Or what would you want your legacy to say about you?
Wow. Wow. Man, he feared God. He feared God, man. DC, Derrick, man, he feared God. That's what Job did. He feared God.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about afraid of God, but he feared him so lovingly, respectfully, that his life was holy because of that fear.
Right.
You know, and that's, you know, that way they see God's glory in that. If they can say that about me, I'm like, so he feared God. Glory to God. God worked in his life.
Yeah.
You know, they're talking about God, not talking about me so much. You know, I would like to hear them say that, be able to say that when they talk about me. Can't help but talk about him.
Yeah.
More, so.
Okay, and I think we're going through the solar eclipse right now.
Yeah.
So this is This is crazy. So the last part of this is any last words, or how would you like to end your interview? Like your final thoughts.
I mean, the questioning was superb.
It was
Joanna,
good. It was good.
You did a really good job.
Thank you.
That's first class stuff.
Oh,
so it doesn't leave me with anything to add because it was thorough.
Okay. Well, this really blessed me. It really did. And that's why I really like doing these, because growing up, I started out hanging out with my dad doing things with him because I knew that was the best way to bond with my dad.
Yeah.
And in doing that, I started learning.
That's beautiful.
It's like, if I want to hang out with my dad, then I got to do what he wants to do. So. And so in doing that, I figured out how much I really love to just sit down with the older people and hear them talk. And so this has just been, it's really just been a pleasure and such a blessing for me to be able to do, because since I was a kid, this is what I love to do. I love to get to know people and to sit down and talk to you guys, and just to get to know you on a different level that maybe I didn't, even though I've known you the majority of my life. So
yes.
I definitely love that I get to do this, because I get to share this with everybody else. And so thank you for taking the time. I know we've been trying to do this. And
yes.
The first time we tried to do it, I was like, the devil's trying to stop me. Little did I know that the Lord was using that as a way for us to get better equipment and increase. And he just blessed us with this.
Yes,
and so
he did.
We're grateful for that. And this has really been a learning process for me. So people who are not really known me in the church are asking, hey, when are you going to put out another one? This is really
seriously
blessing me. Yeah. So it's been really cool, and it's really kept me motivated, because, the enemy will come in and try to discourage me in so many ways. And it's really kept me motivated and to keep going, because it's so much bigger than what I understand. So thank you for coming and sitting down with me and doing this. So I am so blessed to be able to have you.
Yes.
There you have it, guys.
First class stuff here.
Thank you guys so much for watching. We appreciate you. And until next time, y'all have a blessed day. Bye-bye. Welcome to Trophies Pizza. For the last 11 years, we have had the pleasure in serving all of San Angelo by providing handmade, fresh-to-order pizza, wings, and pasta. Stop by today and take advantage of our daily specials. Carry-out and delivery are available. To place an order, call 325-947-7499 or come by our location at 4325 Southwest Boulevard, located next to DK Alon. Our hours of operation are Monday through Thursday from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m., Friday and Saturday for lunch from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., and for dinner from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. We're also open on Sunday from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Thank you for allowing us to serve you. We hope to see you soon. And yes, pineapple does go on pizza.